Okay, what's going on, people? We are back once again with a new video, Conscious Approach channel. Appreciate you for tuning in. My name is JV Wins. That, as usual, is my good buddy Dogon SS to talk about this week's garden variety of social commentary. Before we get into this week's video, like always, I want to start this video off by saying if you like the commentary of this video or if you appreciate any of the commentary on this channel and you have not already done so, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can be a part of the tribe. We are growing the community, and thus far we have our preliminary goal of getting to 1,000 subscribers. And it's been an organic experience so far, but we are looking to up the ante and increase everything tenfold as we move on into the future, definitely into the new year. So we couldn't do this without your support. We appreciate everybody who participates, who comments, who likes the videos, and who subscribes. But to anyone who might catch wind of what we do here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so we can get those numbers up. We want to go ahead and get served up on that YouTube algorithm so that more people can catch what we got going on the conscious approach side of things. So always want to get that out of the way before we get started with the video. So with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. First, we're going to talk about an interesting thing that we saw on Drink Champs. Drink Champs is a program that we have referenced on this channel a couple times before. They tend to get people on there who say interesting things, and this particular clip is no exception. So if you're watching this video, the guy on the left there is a hip-hop star named Murda Mook. He was a guest on Drink Champs. And another individual who we have referenced on this channel several times before, Amber Rose, who you see there on the right, was on that same episode of Drink Champs. And, you know, somehow, some way, throughout their candid conversation, the subject of having no talent being the new talent was brought up. Essentially, what Murda Mook was getting at was, in this day and age, in today's current climate and society, it pays probably more so to be talentless than to have talent. He's essentially saying that having no talent is the new talent. And, you know, women got brought into his diatribe when referencing the idea that having no talent is the new talent. And Amber Rose had not necessarily a contention to that, but she wanted some clarification on Murda Mook's part in terms of, you know, whether you really think that this is an issue or why do you think it is that women with no talent can still get on. So that was the part of this that I wanted to touch on because I thought that that was the most interesting part of that whole entire episode when he, you know, when he was talking about having no talent being the new talent. So we're going to go ahead and play a short snippet of what Murda Mook had to say with some contributions from Amber Rose as well. And it will obviously talk about that whole exchange once we watch the entire clip. So it shouldn't be too bad, not too long, but it's some good stuff. So we'll go ahead and play it and see what they had to say. And then we'll talk about what they had to say.
That's a fact, though.
Having no talent is the new talent. I gotta throw my
Why niggas getting famous just because they views piling? We'll get all the views. Violence, stupid new challenge, whole lot of ignorant dudes on a new
hacking the algorithm however you
chicks
can.
getting booked for 2,000 because they posted nude style. And think about it, having no talent, that's the new talent. I saw a bitch on red carpet. I said, tell me what you do. She said, I'm pretty. I pierce my clit, my titties, my belly button too. I twerk for the gram. My videos get a hella bunch of views. That's very fucking cool, but tell me what you do. It's disgusting. Hoes winning be the image they pumping. Bitches getting famous or famous niggas they fucking. But it's the nigga fault they getting caught. End of discussion. You can't blame the hoes. At the end of the day, them bitches is hustling, man. That was just quick something, but like that's the real shit though. So when you're not consistent, but when you're not consistent and you be like, oh, I'm better than this person or better than that person.
Let me ask you a question.
No,
Let me ask you a question.
Right, she's guest host today. I forgot.
What's the problem?
As far as what? I like the way you said that too, like confrontational.
Yes, I like it.
It's about to be a battle.
What's the problem?
Well, we good. No, I was. What do you mean? I'm from Harlem.
No, I'm saying, but what's the problem?
That nothing. I ain't have a problem with none of that shit. I just report the news.
Okay, but you just freestyling.
I just having no talent.
But
the
do you
new
believe
talent.
it?
As having no talent is the new talent?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but is it a problem?
Is it a problem?
Yeah. Like, do you feel some type of way?
No, it's because I don't got nothing to do with me. It's just what I see.
Do we make some noise for
Yeah,
that?
but I'm
But
saying
if-
like.
Hold on.
Look,
What
if
I'm
you think
saying
about it, right? It's a
I'm saying,
talent
like-
in itself, though. If having no talent is a talent, that's some talent. Now you're talented. Like you talented at not being talented.
That
It's
became
kinda-
a talent. Right.
That became a talent.
But like,
It's
who do you
looking in the
blame
mirror.
for that?
Blame?
That's
Yeah.
society's thing.
Like, who do you blame for that? Like,
Yeah.
is it the girl's problem or is it the consumer?
Oh, this is not even just about
It's the
females,
consumer.
guys. That was just the woman thing I used. That was just one aspect.
But I
of it.
just feel like guys should not just never talk about women
as far as
everything. Like it should never be a conversation.
you said, talk about them.
Yeah, like as far as like okay, let's say like me, Kim Kardashian, Jada, Ari. Like it should never be a conversation amongst men because it's like you have to then blame the consumer, right? Because these girls, us, are like known as like not having talent, but like we make a lot of money.
Well, no,
Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of it. I think that last part right there kind of sent it home. I don't want to put words into Amber Rose's mouth, but I'm pretty sure that when she talks about the consumer, she's talking about men as consumers of that whole dynamic. You know, talking about chicks on social media who make a lot of money or whatnot. When she is referencing consumers, she was being nondescript, but I feel comfortable saying that she was talking about guys being those consumers, men being those consumers. So you know, there's plenty to unpack there. I don't know if you had any opinion one way or the other on what either one of them had to say when it comes to having no talent being the new talent, especially when it comes to this new culture and this new society and how women get on and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would like to say that first off, shout out to Murda Mook. I don't know where they dusted him off at and found him at, but it was pleasant to see him recently. To hear his little soliloquy, his little handful of bars he presented, that was also it's kind of cool. I feel like he should have cut it off a little sooner. I think I would have had a little bit more punch into it. But as far as what he was saying, it's an observation we've all made. So I think we pretty much all noticed, herself included, that it doesn't require as much talent nowadays to air quote get on as it used to be in the past. So with that, I agree with. I don't have any problems with what he was saying there. When it comes to what Amber Rose was saying, as far as blaming the consumers of said talentless people, I also agree that there's consumers that are eating it up, but at the same time, I don't think A, Murda Mook, or B, Amber Rose hit on exactly what is going on here. This is a phenomenon that has many angles to it. We'll tackle some of them here, I'm sure. But just option A and option B, I still don't feel as though that they were both coming from a bias and they weren't looking at the overarching umbrella that's causing this phenomenon to occur in the first place. So Mook, just being a guy who comes from the situation where he had to grind through battle raps, through DVDs, back in the days where, you had to get on rapping through DVDs, going to A&R offices and all that other stuff. So he came from an era where you had to be talented in order to air quote get on. And so he's voicing his opinion from these new people nowadays who aren't as talented as he was when he was trying to really get on. And I would tend to agree with that. And so he's coming from that angle. And Rose is coming from the angle of being a talentless person who made it. So she's defending her stance there. So that's why they both, to me, have narrow points of views of this phenomenon that's going on they're both arguing from a personal experience, but not overall what's really happening with the scenario. So initial takes there. How about you, sir? Do you agree with Mrs. Rose here or Mr. Mook?
I agree with both of them. I agree more with Amber Rose, though, ironically. First off, I will say Nori, and this is off topic, but I just still want to say it. Nori is one of those people to me who is funny without trying to be funny.
He a messy
Like
person.
his face, yeah, like his facial expressions and his comedic timing on the stuff that he be saying on that show is spot on. And he's not even trying to do any of that. It's just a natural part of his
Yeah,
personality.
he's just messy as
which-
hell. That's what it is.
Yeah, which I admire about him. I think he has latent comedic talent in that regard. And so even though he will bring people on and kind of give them the floor to speak their piece, he's still kind of the heartbeat of that show. So and I commend Nori because he comes from our generation, and he's one of the few people who has entered into that podcast space and is doing it well.
Yeah.
Which is something that I can't say for most of these people who try to do the same thing. When it comes to Murda Mook, yeah, he kind of went rapper mode halfway through his diatribe. He started like actually, putting bars into what he was saying. But I get the essence of where he's coming from. See, a lot of this stuff is a generational observation. So Mook, I believe, is like at least around our age or maybe a little older. He comes from a generation, as you said, in which you had to show and prove. So if you had nothing to contribute talent-wise, the chances of you becoming successful were not that great unless you just so happen to be backed by a machine within the music industry who wanted to pump you up and put you out there for reasons other than your music or your talent in most cases. So I get a lot of what he's saying, but I think the heart of what he was getting at was the sexual marketplace. I think that was the heart of what he was trying to get at. How effective he was, we can debate that for sure, but I think that was at the heart of what he was trying to get. He didn't really start to catch steam until he started talking about the women and started talking about how, chicks, he asked a chick on the red carpet, what does he do? And the chick responded, well, I'm pretty. And women getting on because they have certain piercings or their body looks a certain kind of way or they're shaking it on the gram and all of that kind of stuff. I feel like that was at the essence of what he was talking about, because I think that that's the area, in my opinion, probably the one area of modern culture in which you can most clearly observe the advent of having no talent being inconsequential to whether you can become successful is when it comes to the sexual marketplace. I still think that there are pockets of modern society where having talent is better than not having talent. Now, is it disintegrating as we progress into the future? Yes. So in movies, music, entertainment, and all of that kind of stuff, is it becoming even less common for you to for there to be a need for talent in order for you to be successful? Sure. But I think that even in those respective spaces, having talent does you more good than not. But I think when it comes to the sexual marketplace and how a lot of women can essentially propagate their sex appeal in just the very sake of their existence alone and become huge successes, that's the one area of modern society where you most evidently see this advent of having no talent being inconsequential towards success. And I think that was what Mook was trying to get at. And so from that standpoint, I don't agree or disagree. I just think he was kind of stating the obvious. He could have done a more effective job of doing so, sure, but I think that was at the heart of what he was getting at. But I think it was Amber Rose's response to what he said that more men in particular need to pay attention to, because it's men's fault that the sexual marketplace exists in the first place. Now, there's always, from an historical standpoint, been a proliferated sexual marketplace when it comes to the sexual marketplace in the traditional sense. Things like escorting and prostitution. But now what we have going on is women who get to just become rich because they can, put their face and their body on social media apps and various social networks. So things like OnlyFans and Snapchat and Instagram was actually the original inception of this. Women's ability to get on these platforms and essentially do nothing but be themselves and, post pics of themselves, videos, things of that nature, wearing certain outfits, or just, like I said, merely for the sake of their existence. I think that there is pushback in certain, lanes of the manosphere and in certain other recesses of society towards that dynamic, because people are looking at that kind of stuff and saying, why do women who have the gumption to do this kind of stuff get to become, famous and, financially free and all this kind of stuff by not actually contributing anything to society other than just kind of looking good?
Mm-hmm.
And Amber Rose's response to Murda Mook was, whose fault is that? Or is it a problem? And, if women like us are truly a problem, then why is it that we continue to do this and get money? And the answer is because men continue to fund the beast. So, and from that standpoint, I kind of feel like Amber Rose was spot on with that. But, we've talked about this kind of stuff before, and not much of it is going to change until a lot of these guys wake up and realize that they exacerbate these issues by feeding these various beasts. I'm not trying to directly compare women to animals, but if you try to analogize it in such a way that might resonate with more people, like if you have a stray animal who's like walking around your neighborhood, and this animal's a stray and it has nowhere to go and it's just kind of walking around aimlessly with no direction. And you decide one day that you're going to give the animal, let's say it's a dog, and you decide one day you're going to put a bowl of food and a bowl of water outside your front door because you feel some type of way about feeding the dog and giving the dog sustenance. And the dog, takes advantage of that. Well, let's say you don't do it every day, but ever so often that dog is going to remember that, and the dog is going to see whether you're going to do it again. Now, the more often that you do this, the more often that dog is going to come around. Now, if you're doing this every day, that dog eventually is going to be waiting at your doorstep each and every day, looking for that food and sustenance. Not because the dog is saying, I'm not doing anything to earn this, but I think as animals, as creatures of habit, and it's a part of human nature, much so like animals who aren't even human, when you get accustomed to certain behaviors and norms and treatment, you're going to gravitate towards that, especially when you realize that there's no penalty to be paid. So men today, to bring it home to the point about this video and my initial thoughts about Murda Mook and Amber Rose, women are realizing that they can make huge gains in modern society just by existing in the world and not contributing anything. And they're accustomed to that treatment because men afford them with the ability to do so, or at least that's how I see it. So I think it's a natural propensity for humans, much less women, to realize that they are being rewarded for something. And they're not going to necessarily conceptualize whether they're contributing anything to get the reward. They're just going to see that if I do A, I will receive B. So all you guys out there who are creating ways for these women to get $10,000 a month just by streaming on OnlyFans, or women who get to be social media influencers because all you dudes out here are liking all of their pics and their videos and commenting on their pages, serving these algorithms up so that these women can become rich and famous, essentially off of doing nothing but merely existing. If you perceive this to be a problem, you have no one to blame but yourselves for this being an issue. And so until you dial it back, it's going to continue to become an issue. Now, obviously, that's a surface level take. There's deeper meanings behind a lot of this, to be sure, but just kind of tackling this from the surface, those were my initial thoughts on where a lot of this comes from. You have to stop feeding the beast. If you don't want the dog to show up on your front porch every day, don't put water in a bowl of food out in front of your doorstep. But the more you spend your money subscribing to these pages, these women don't care about you. They don't want to meet you unless you're rich enough to fly them out. They don't care about who you are. All they care is that you're paying that subscription each month. And you're getting nothing intrinsic in return, and yet you're capitulating to the dynamic anyway. And this is happening in droves. We talked about, before we went live on this video, how much more weird society is becoming with each and every year and each and every generation, where this is becoming more normal and commonplace. Low self-esteem, no confidence, no social skills having men who are resorting to these various outlets to get some kind of affirmation from women because they can't get it off the muscle. And women are realizing it and seeing that this is all they have to do in order to get on and to get whatever it is that they want: rich, famous, both, financial freedom, access to quote unquote high value men, however you choose to define what high value means. This is all a part of it, but none of it exists if men don't fund it. So men just got to stop funding it. And I think Amber Rose's point, even though she wasn't the best at articulating it, is as long as y'all men, you dudes out here keep funding it, we're going to keep doing it. And from that standpoint, I don't think that she was necessarily wrong. But is Mook correct in that it's a talentless, it's an issue of the talentless still getting on despite being talented? I mean, despite being talentless. Yeah, he was right with that. But she's also right when she says, well, if you don't like it, do something about it. And, not enough guys are willing to do something about it.
Well, I agree with that. But I would say that this problem it's a systemic problem. So this isn't something, and I agree with you that men need to stop. But if they're not aware that they're sick, then they're not going to change this behavior. And how are they getting sick? So what's the one that kills you and you can't even smell it? Carbon monoxide? Is that the one?
Yeah.
So if let's say that men, humans in general, all right, one of the base animalistic things that we have is sexuality, period. And if one is not under control of their sexuality, then they're doomed to do God knows what. And what we're witnessing right now in modern society is God knows what. And, from pansexual to that and this, everybody's just doing whatever. Pornography run rampant, you name it. And so when people aren't aware that they're under attack, see, I personally believe that corporate interests and oligarchical powers, all right, have an interest in making sure that people stay off balance. And the easiest way to get a population of people out of balance is tackling their sexuality. And so if you can confuse someone's sexuality, whether they're heterosexual, homosexual, whatever, if you confuse it, then they struggle to get other things done. So, for instance, if you want to look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, all right, when it comes to sexuality and stuff like reproduction, all right, that's like a base type of thing. And in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you can't get the base things achieved, good luck achieving the other stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, the tenet of the hierarchy of needs is that it's sequential. Mm-hmm. So you have to achieve the bottom row before you can progress to and then you can't reach self-actualization, which is the top need, without achieving the ones below. Yeah.
Right. And if you're not trained, see, humans are animals, as you mentioned. So like animals, they need to be trained in order to be domesticated and civilized. And so if we're not training humans on how to conduct sexuality appropriately, well then, they'll be shitting in the house.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, I've been shitting in the houses for as long as I was born. So it must be natural. Oh, it's natural to shit anywhere you find it. But there's sanitary ways of handling your bowel movements so you don't always have shit in the house. And so society has targeted people sexuality, and now we have everybody run amok when it comes to, whatever. It's no coincidence that with all of this liberal stuff that's been going on and all these liberal things that's been pushed in school, targeting sexuality, that now we have such soft people in the sense of everybody's triggered, everybody's offended, nobody's taking care of responsibilities anymore. There's no accountability going on, because how could you take care of all of these other things if you don't have a discipline? And one of the strongest disciplines one should have is sexual discipline. And that's what everybody has been cultivated to not have. And so when people have been getting bombarded with sex, because again, the reason why sex sells is because it's the base animal thing. It's one of the first things that get triggered in people. And so when people were too young enough to talk, they've been bombarded by sexual manipulation. And so with these people, they grew up and they're trying to actualize, instead of actualizing discipline and other things, they're trying to actualize the sexual mind control that they've been bombarded with since they were kids. So this is where the carbon monoxide comes from. If you try to tell these people to get out of that house because it's dangerous, like as you're telling them, they going, I can't smell nothing. What you mean? Hey, bro, hey, there's a leak in there. I just know it. And then they're telling you, I don't see nothing. I don't smell nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. And they're just going to power through life. What is going to end up happening with society is that they're going to stay in this house full of carbon monoxide. And right now we're witnessing the deterioration of families, deterioration of education, intellect, attention. There's a whole bunch of things that are deteriorating, and it's due to all of the various stimuli that everybody has been absorbing since they were too young to remember. So by coming to, and I agree with you, but by coming to people at the end of the road and telling them that to change certain behaviors, there's a lot of steps that they have to correct first, and a lot of things they would have to acknowledge first before they're able to not subscribe to the next OnlyFans page. And so this is a deep-rooted issue for humans in general. Now, when it comes to men's sexuality, has been targeted, and especially if they're in our cohort and below, there was too much access to pornography. And so if sexuality is at the base bottom level, and then they watch so much of that stuff and they just keep cranking it out one after the next, whatever, that's why we have the involuntarily celibate levels that we have, is because of this access, I would argue. And so with all of this pornography, with all of this various stimuli, they don't know what else to do. It's not like they're getting laid, so I'm gonna like this picture. It's not like they're getting laid, so I'm gonna text somebody in the chat and hopefully she recognizes it. Oh, she didn't recognize it? Let me send her a $5 chat. And so this is what's happening in society. So now it's like, oh, okay, well, we're looking at the very last dominoes, which rightfully so. It's the easiest thing to observe. And then we're looking at all of this mess and then this chaos, and we're like, yo, get it together, guys. But so many of them are lost. So they would put on an Amber Rose. If your sexuality is confused, I would also argue that there's other levels of common sense and things that are also confused. So that's why your Tekashi 6ix9ines get on, and your whatever people get on, because people don't have the same level of intellect they used to have. Critical thinking, because critical thinking has also been targeted. So to tie it all in a nice bow, yes, Murda Mook does have a point, as I agree with earlier. and his was more of an, just an observation for sure. Amber Rose has a point here as well, but that's why I was saying that I believe there's an overarching umbrella and various components that are playing into the final result that we see, as in spineless men who
Yeah.
who entertain foolishness because they don't have a solid firm base, and that the reason why they don't have a solid firm base is because they're confused sexually, even if they're heterosexual. So that's how I feel about
Yeah.
this whole scenario here.
Yeah, I agree 1000% with that. But it isn't just sexual confusion. Well, you brought up other examples. It's common sense confusion, critical thinking confusion, intelligence confusion. Intellect is the word that you use. All of that is being data mined, if you will. And the thing is, like, okay, so what does talent see? In my opinion, talent denotes a standard.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, whenever we start talking about people who have this level of talent or that level of talent, we're denoting a particular standard with respect to whatever it is that you're talking about, and it's something that you can see. So it doesn't have to be an entertainer. It doesn't have to be a hip hop person. It doesn't have to be an athlete. It can be an engineer, right? It can be an artist. It can be an architect. And the thing about these individuals is there's a discernible difference between what they can do and what others who can't do what they do look like. And so what denotes talent to me is also a baseline level of standards. And so it comes as no coincidence to me that we're talking about, in this particular context with this particular topic, talentless people still being able to get on despite not having talent. Well, we're dealing with a culture that is increasingly not caring about standards. And so if you don't care about standards, why would you care about talent? Because when we're talking about talent, it also denotes a standard. A talented singer is going to have a baseline standard for how their talent is represented. And it's the same thing everywhere else. I brought up engineers, architects, people in STEM applications, people in IT, whatever field you want to bring up, lawyers, doctors, people who work in medicine, people who work in finance and accounting. There's a certain standard that is inherent in these individuals and the talent that they possess. And so if we're talking about a society that doesn't care about whether you're talented or not, and will still continue to feed the beast and put you on because we're so incredibly dumbed down thanks to all the stimuli that we become exposed to on a daily basis, then it stands to reason that there is a commonality between that and the fact that as a culture, we don't care about standards, period. And I would argue that we don't. And I'm not trying to be a fuddy-duddy, every now and again, I don't mind the occasional mindless piece of entertainment myself. But what we have done is we have started to transplant mindless entertainment for talent. So in other words, what we'll start doing is we'll start calling people like 6ix9ine and Amber Rose talented, and they're actually not. So not only are people's sexual identity being confused and their common sense being confused and their intellect being confused, but the very conceptualization of basic notions like talent are also being confused. So you're looking at people who have no talent and you're saying, wow, they have 1 million followers, they must therefore be talented. No, they're not. They're just taking advantage of a system that doesn't require standards. And when you're in a system that doesn't require standards, you cannot have talent and get on. We can argue until the cows come home how beneficial that is. I would argue it's not the best thing in the world. But as you said, the impetus of it, we can find the origins of it, they're more deeply rooted than just simply stating that, people don't have talent, but they're still getting on. There's reasons for why these things are taking place. But when you are dealing with a culture that is subservient and doesn't care about standards, then of course people with no talent can get on, because in order to care about talent, you'd have to have standards. And we don't have standards. Therefore, we don't care about whether you have talent or not. So, Amber Rose, who I would say is talentless, the Kardashians, who I would say collectively are talentless, You know, 6ix9ine is another person who I would say is talentless. Any of these other content creators on YouTube and whatnot. Hell, I would even suggest that these gamers on Twitch encompass more talent than some of these social media influencers, because at least they are willing to dedicate enough time to being good at playing the damn video game. Now, there's issues with video gaming and all that stuff because that funnels into this whole incel sexual identity issue that we got going on with these dudes out here, you know, running rampant. But nevertheless, at least they contribute more to society than some of these social media influencers and these other people who can just become self-actualized in the monetary and fame perspective, merely because they are able to take advantage of, you know, a culture and society as we see it before our very eyes today, that doesn't care necessarily about things such as standards and talent. And so, yeah, until that baseline hierarchy of need gets satisfied, then the upper echelons of that particular pyramid aren't going to be met. And yeah, there's just a lot of stray dogs running around the streets being fed steak and being given water, even though they're strays and don't deserve it otherwise. But I guess, you know, I feel as though from the standpoint of this channel and the way that we speak on stuff like this, and, you know, the way that I can say both Murda Mook and Amber Rose have points. In my opinion, Amber Rose had a deeper point because, you know, I like to get to the progenitors of certain behaviors. And in this particular context, I think men is the progenation of this particular issue. All I can do is just from this particular standpoint say, hey, man, a lot of y'all are already at the point where you have reached a certain age in which certain behaviors are already embedded in your brains. It's going to take a lot of therapy to undo all of those layers of psychosis. But in the meantime, I will say, y'all need to get off the OnlyFans, stop liking and subscribing to so many of these pics, and get out there in the world and try to do things in person. And, you know, it's easier said than done for all of the things that you laid out, and all of that stuff is 100% plausible. But damn, it breaks my heart to see so much of this stuff running rampant so badly. And, you know, I'm not a cure-all. I can't sprinkle fairy dust on everybody and allow us men in particular to dial it back so that these chicks aren't making $100,000 a month just because they got an OnlyFans page. All I can say is, hey, get off there. You know, get rid of some of those subscriptions, work on it, go to therapy, you know, try to peel back some of these layers and understand the reasons for why you think that you have to do these things, so that eventually you can realize you don't actually have to do it. But, you know, until more of that happens, I guess we can just continue to sit back and watch the world go by as the talentless continue to get on, despite the fact that they don't have talent.
Well, when we were kids, and I agree with you, but and when we were kids and we were growing up and we were doing you know, math, and you know, we busting out scientific calculators, we're busting out calculators, and we're trying to do our work through the calculators, and the teachers hated it. They said, hey, figure it out without the calculator. At the time, I was like, what do you mean? There's a machine here that does it for me, so why do I need to do it? And their argument was, you have to use your brain. This thing is doing it for you, so you're not thinking when you're just inputting numbers. So do it yourself. Use the calculator to check your work. It bothered the hell out of me, but I followed the process. Then when we got older, for instance, Google. Now, I used to have to spell things out. I would spell things out. I used to use a dictionary. Then Google came around. It was like, did you mean silhouette? And I was like, yeah, I meant silhouette. Now when I'm typing stuff, and I'm guilty of this too. Now when I'm typing stuff, I'm like, how the hell do you spell that? I don't know. Google will figure it out. Even when I'm in Microsoft Word, I'm writing documents. I'm like, what?
Spell check.
Yeah. Nah, I was like, is this an I before the E situation, or is this an E or an I? I don't know. I'm gonna just spell it. And then they corrected me, and I'm like, yep, you know, I was wrong. And I knew I was going to be wrong. Why? Because I don't take the time out to use those areas of my brain. Now, this is coming from now previous generations. Now, they had to do a lot more stuff, right? I mean, they were pretty much living in the Flintstones era compared to what's going on now. And so they had to do a lot of things mechanically, and they had to use areas of their brain to actually get those things fired up and going. With all the advents of smartphones and all of these devices and things that's going on, that's doing a lot of stuff for a lot of people. The younger generation has grown up not using certain areas of their brains. And since they're not using certain areas of those brains, of their brain, then those areas become atrophied. And then you get this dragging the feet, slow to talk, depressed generation that's coming up nowadays. And when you talk to all these kids, they all have the same monotone pitch. You'll get something that's alive and that's talking. But I'm running into and seeing a lot of children that are not motivated, don't care, seem entitled. All right. But even though they don't even come from good circumstances, some of them, but they still have this sense of entitlement. They don't want to use areas of their brain. Something will figure it out for me type of mentality. And then when you have all of those things going on, there's this, and then there's a lack of personal conversations that's going on, lack of, we brought up last week that, you used to have to really holler at girls. You actually had to call the people's house and talk. And, either the mom or the dad would answer the phone. Hey, can I talk to Tasha, please? And then, you had to do all of that. There's none of that anymore. Not with DMs, not with all these things that make life, air quote, easier. All of these technologies that's making life easier is making people worse, because now they don't have to use areas of their brain. They don't have to use certain characteristics that would, make them sharper. So then you get people who would have been talented back in the day, but they don't seem to be talented now. They are the talent now because they're the most talented people of the talentless people that's coming up, if this is making sense. So the kids and the people that are sitting here and watching this, they are in a space where they look at these people as role models, because those people that are talentless are actually using areas of the brain that these people can't. That's why we'll sit here and look at these people and go, what's going on here? People from an older generation, like Murda Mook or Amber Rose, and go, well, yeah, we're talentless. Amber Rose says, yeah, we're talentless, but we still got on. Whose fault is that? It's the consumers who can't recognize real talent, because we can recognize it. That's why we call it out. But the consumers who don't know what real talent is, because they've been using all types of automation and things like that, not using areas of their brain to spark critical thinking or common sense. So then these goofballs get on. So what we're witnessing right now, and people love to holler about how great technology is. The better the technology is getting, the dumber the people are getting. So that's why we have talentless people that are on at this point. So, and the people that are actually talented, the people that actually have critical thoughts and things to say of that nature or whatever, they're unicorns. And, it's a dying breed, honestly. So I'm not sharting on the new generation. It's not their fault. They didn't know what was going on. And it's not my fault either that I don't know how to do certain things that my ancestors did, because they didn't have a smartphone or a laptop or computer programs to write documents. They used typewriters. They had to use various areas of their brains. So, yeah, man, I think this is the perfect storm that we're witnessing, and that the part that's obvious and that's on display is a talentless woman with piercings on a red carpet somewhere, where back in the day where people actually used to use areas of their brain, and the fans had to use areas of their brain to actually recognize a certain level of talent. So that's what I'm saying. It's a concert of things that are, in my opinion, that contribute to this phenomenon that we're witnessing nowadays. So
yeah, yeah, I hear all of that. I just think it's too bad, and yeah, everything always has an unintended consequence. Even these like when they were developing these social media networks, they thought that they were creating something that was going to be beneficial to the world, but it certainly had various unintended consequences. And when you throw capitalism and commercialization into that, no one's going to care about the unintended consequences. They're just going to care about the benefits that they can reap from it. But yeah, it is making people worse. It's just I hear far too often from men in particular who are capable of critical thought, who say, I don't know what's going on out here. I can't seem to get anywhere with these women or any kind of thing because I'm dealing with all of this smoke screen. And routinely, when I have conversations with these guys about this stuff, they bring up things like this. They bring up stuff like OnlyFans and Instagram modeling and influencers and paid to hire and all of this they bring it up. I'm not making this up. They bring this up. It's not like I coerce it out of them. They bring it up. And so that's why I say there must be a large enough population of men out here who are trying to get this all figured out, who are wondering, how do we figure it out? And so all I can say is spread the message. Tell these other guys out here to just get off of these platforms. You'd be amazed at how much things can change. Excuse me. Without going down the rabbit hole on some of the more systemic issues. But yeah, it is what it is. I think they both have a point there.
No, you good.
Some went down the wrong pipe.
That's all good. Hey, well, I'll tell y'all this. In the meanwhile, my dog JV wins. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscriptions. Okay. All right. We're trying to hit 100K nowadays. You know what I'm saying? So, guys, hit that like button. All right. Tell a friend. Let them know that we over here spitting facts. All right. On the weekly here at the Conscious Pros live streams. All right. So, greatly appreciate you guys for watching, and let us know what you guys think here in the comment section. All right, we had a bit of a spill there when it came to what Amber Rose and Murda Mook had to say. What do you guys think? What do you guys believe is the progeniting behavior for talentless people all of a sudden being talented, air quotes? So
yeah, I'd say, fella, stop feeding the beast. That's what I'll say. That's what I'd say. All right, so that was a pretty good topic. We'll go ahead and move on from there. Next up, we are going to talk about controversial content creator Andrew Tate and our good friend Brittany Renner. Brittany Renner is a friend of the channel. Brittany Renner, Diamond the Body, Lori Harvey, Kanye West. We have a few people who are friends of the channel. We call them friends of the channel because they just keep producing. They are the gift that keeps on giving. They just give us stuff that fits in with the identity of this channel and the type of stuff that we like to talk about. But Andrew Tate and Brittany Renner were on the ESC podcast, and Brittany Renner asked Andrew Tate specifically, why is it that men have such a difficult time getting with women who have history? And Andrew Tate gave an Andrew Tate reason as to why men have an issue getting with women who have a history. Now, of course, this comes as no shock to anybody who even vaguely follows Brittany Renner. Brittany Renner is one of these, I don't know, I'll put it mildly. She's one of these social media socialite industry women who famous. She and you know, to her credit, she is accountable for this. So she talks about her baggage, but nevertheless, she is an industry chick with baggage who is in the midst of trying to reform her public image in such a way that she can come off as a woman who is worthy of being the wife or girlfriend to a dutiful man within the confines of a dutiful relationship. How, despite the fact that she wrote a book about all the rappers and athletes that she had sex with, and how she is the single mother to an NBA player, how, despite all of that, should still be looked upon as a dutiful wife and mother. That's what she's in the process of trying to do now. I don't think I'm out of bounds by saying that. And so she was on the ESC podcast. Andrew Tate, who is someone who makes videos about modern women and modern relationships, and he tends to get the adulation of the manosphere, which I have mixed feelings about, because there are certain segments of the manosphere that, in my opinion, are toxic. But nevertheless, he's somebody who propagates this kind of stuff. He's become, he's become quite known as a result, and he makes a lot of money doing it. So there are a lot of these people out here, in particular men. I'm willing to bet that there are a lot of the men who are his fans are the same men that we described in our previous topic. But he has a pretty big following. He has a big fan base, and they were on the ESC podcast, and Brittany Renner asked Andrew Tate, why is it that men have such a difficult time getting with women who have baggage? The word that she used was used. So she was like, well, why do men have such an issue getting with used women when women can get with used men, and men are celebrated for being used, whereas women are vilified for being used? So this was an interesting topic. It fits in with the profile of our channel. So we'll go ahead and listen to Andrew Tate's response to Brittany Renner's question, and then we'll talk about it.
As for, I don't know your history. I don't know the past, but we can just talk in generalizations in regards
people
to
like me, I guess, under the same umbrella. It doesn't have to be personal.
I don't know any of it, but we'll give generalizations. One of the main reasons that men are scared of a female with history is because it makes the man insecure. And scared dogs bite. So this is why men will snap or get angry quick, or they'll bring up your history. If you get an argument with him, he'll bring up your history, whatever. But a lot of it is insecurity, and it's not insecurity because the man is insecure. The female paradigm in society convinces men, any man who says anything, you're insecure. It's not insecure in that way. It's insecure in a very realistic, logical way. Like I was saying earlier, she's had a lot of life experience. Let's be honest. Am I the richest guy she's ever had? No. Am I the most famous guy she's ever had? No. Am I the best looking guy she's ever had? No. Like, what's keeping her here? And then part of it comes down to, well, am I second place? If she could do better, would she do better? Like, there's a whole bunch of insecurity involved. And that's where tiny things, like I know it sounds like dumb shit, tiny things about the favorite car brand become more important than ever, right? It's your job as a woman, regardless of how much sexual history you've had or what guy you're with, etc. It's your job as a woman to make your man feel secure in the fact and make him feel like a man, like Auntie was saying, make him feel like the man no matter what he does, so that he feels like you really truly believe he's the best choice for you on the planet. That's your job to do. Now, if you've had a checkered past, that's perhaps more difficult. You need to be more tactful with it, more tactical about it, but you have to achieve the same result. You have to do the exact same thing, right? So, yeah, it's easy for me if I get a 21-year-old virgin from some village in Slovakia and I'm multi-millionaire Andrew Tate. Of course, it's a very easy, she's never had better. She'll never get better. She's never been anywhere. Boom, boom, easy one, right? But like you said, the world's not so idealistic. The reality is that people have had relationships, et cetera, et cetera. But a man is happiest in the relationship when he feels like man of the house and when he truly feels like you believe he's the best man that you could possibly ever get and have ever gotten. Because a man is jealous. I'll tell you something.
All right. So that's pretty much the gist of it, in his explanation for that. So sounded measured and reasonable to me, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who don't agree with that. Do you think that what he said was reasonable and measured?
Oh, absolutely. So, the buzzwords that used to get to me, such as insecure, I mean, it didn't get to me, but it got some part of me. The insecure, you're being sensitive, and all these other things that controlling, these 4-letter words that used to get thrown at me, and I used to internalize them. I ain't gonna lie. He's like, hey man, I'm not being insecure. Are you kidding me? You know. But whenever those words are thrown at men, they're thrown at them in the context of, for sure, shaming, but also so they could, it's like greasing you up to get away with something later. And the sense of which Andrew Tate is talking about insecurities, I would say this is a more healthy form and more realistic form, in the sense of, like how he said, why wouldn't you do better if you know that there is better out there? What's stopping you? Nothing stopped you before. You kept hopping and jumping to the next best thing every time. That's how you got me. So why wouldn't you just hop and leave me now? If you're addicted to the rush of elevating lifestyles. So I agree with his stance in that department, because with women that are modern, right, the one that are out here, living loosey goosey, giving it off out of both draw legs, all right, just letting the world have it. When they're living like that, they're taking each aspect from a guy that they liked, and they say, okay, this guy had, this much money. I want a guy with this much money. This guy was this good in bed. I want a guy with that much money and this good in bed. I had a guy who dressed this nice. I had a guy that wore this kind of cologne. I want a guy that makes this kind of money, this good in bed, this, and they create this Frankenstein man. Now there's this Frankenstein man in their head because they've had access to too many dudes. Guys compartmentalize their thoughts. So I can have a woman who was good at cooking, good in the bedroom, but bad emotionally. So when I deal with the next girl, the last girl was good at those things, but there is going to be a level of comparison, but not to the point of, I'm just drop this. If the girl is good enough cooking, if she's good enough in bed, and she's better emotions, because I want better emotions, then it's just like, all right, well, cool. So there's a thing where I can go from and I can be what we call content. Men can be content with what they have. It's just a difference in brain function. But what I'm witnessing, especially from modern woman syndrome, is they don't get content because they have this 4-letter word of settling, and they don't want to settle. So if they feel as though there's something out there better, then they're going to go hop and try to find something better. They'll sabotage whatever situation that they have so they can get free. Or they'll call it off themselves, either or. And so what Tate is saying is that the more access to lifestyles, the more access to sexual prowess, the more access to whatever, then they're going to amalgamate some type of fictitious fantasy Frankenstein man that no man can live up to. So eventually those women end up being alone and unmarried at the end of the road because they tried to find Frankenstein. So I have more on this one, but how about you, sir? Do you agree with Mr. Tate on this one here?
Frankenstein, that's hilarious. I think a few videos ago, that same description, you called it the mystery man. Yes, but I think I like Frankenstein better because you're literally building a machine of a person. Mm-hmm. A lot of women do that. They do. Yeah, I agree with him. When I was in high school and I started trying to, play sports, when I was a freshman, I tried out for the basketball team JV. And I tried, you remember how the tryouts went. It was like It was like open gym. That's what they called it. So everybody goes in there and everybody's just playing pickup. They pick 5 guys on one team, another 5 guys. You do like a 5-10 minute run, game over, next game in. From there, the coaches make their observations and they make their selections. So I was in the open gym and I, was trying, and I'm in there and I'm trying out. And guys are getting cut left and right. There's one cut here, cut, right, cut. Guys everywhere are getting cut. No one in the open gym is making it to the actual team. Everybody's getting cut. So I eventually got cut. Now, a couple weeks later, because more guys got cut, they asked me to come back and run open gym again. True story. Yeah. So, now it's been like 4 or 5 weeks. Guys been getting cut all over the place. So now I'm in this second open gym and I'm freaking out because I don't want to get cut. So it affected my play. Because I was not wanting to get cut. Now, it had no bearing on whether I was a good player or not. It was a measured physical response to anxiety that I was experiencing because I kept looking at everybody around me getting cut. It's not like it was a few cuts here, but guys were advancing to the next phase of the tryout process. Guys were just getting cut in open gym, like boom, right there on the spot. No, you're not good. You're not good enough. You're not good. Well, what are you looking for, coach? Like, what do you want? Like, guys can't even make it to second tryout, this first tryout, and y'all cutting everybody in open gym. And then I got cut already, and now you're bringing me back for the second round of first open gym to not even get to the next phase. So it affected my play. And, eventually, because it affected my play so much, I was cut again. Now, this is an analogy because I'm trying to bring a point home. Now, I could have gone to these coaches and been like, yo, coach, is there anything that I could have done so that you didn't cut me despite everything that was going on? Like, I didn't I was playing scared because I didn't want to get cut. And, it would have scarred me for life if those coaches would have responded to me saying, you shouldn't worry about getting cut. Stop being insecure. Like, that's a measured, reasonable response to this, to things that are happening around me. Like, I'm getting cut all over the place. Now, you can say that I should be mentally tough enough to ward off all of that, but I think most human beings are going to be conscientious of their surroundings. I'm a 15-year-old kid, and I'm seeing everybody getting cut around me, and I got cut already, and then you brought me back again for a first-round cut situation in an open gym. So it's not even like I got a leg up because I was in the open gym before. You're bringing me back to start from scratch. And I think what Brittany Renner and people and women like her are trying to understand is, why can't I hold your feet to the fire for being insecure, but you still want to take me on? So in Brittany Renner's mind, I should be mentally strong enough to ward off all of that stuff that's going on in my immediate environment and still be strong-willed enough to play for your team, despite the fact that you've been cutting me since day one. So you can't have all of the leverage but not accept any responsibility for how some of this stuff plays out. So I think Andrew Tate is 100% right in his particular response in this regard, because the thing about it is, just like it's a reasonable and measured response for me to wonder whether I'm going to be cut or not because everybody around me is being cut, I think for any man, it's a reasonable and measured response to wonder whether, because he's dealing with a woman who's been with rappers, athletes, entertainers, guys who fly on private jets, millionaires, whatever the case may be, a guy who is now going to step into your cipher after you've had those various experiences, you can't turn around and say that he's being insecure because he's wondering whether you'll dunk on him for the next guy who might show you interest, who's a millionaire. That's a reasonable and measured response. But in Brittany Renner world, that man's being insecure. Now, to be reasonable, Brittany Renner wasn't calling men insecure during that podcast.
For sure.
What Andrew Tate was addressing was the issue that men experience when dealing with women who have histories like the history of that of Brittany Renner. And I think that it's a completely measured response. No guy wants to deal with that kind of onslaught of an overload of information and history on the part of the women that he's dealing with. And much like we talked about before when we discussed Brittany Renner and women in Brittany Renner's position want to rewrite history and try to make it seem as though none of that stuff happened, so that you can look upon me as dutiful, even though I've never, up until this point, conducted myself in a dutiful way. Most men are going to wonder whether you're going to dunk on me for the next situation if you perceive yourself to have the opportunity to upgrade. That doesn't make that guy insecure. It makes him a measured and reasonable person who's going to evaluate the information that's being presented to him. And that fits into the package of what makes it difficult for a man to seriously consider a quote used woman, to use the word that she used. She said used. I mean, you have to understand that. This is a bet. Once again, this is a bet that you made, and she accepts accountability for where she is, but she's still trying to reinvent the wheel and make it seem as though none of these things should be at play and that guys shouldn't consider any of this stuff. And I don't know how realistic it is to expect that. It isn't realistic at all. Most guys are going to do that. It is what it is. And it's no different, in all honesty, than a woman who is getting approached by a guy who she knows has a body count in the hundreds or thousands, right? So, let's say a guy who has been with your friend, been with your maybe you got a sister and you got a guy, and this guy's coming at you, but this guy's been with your sister. This guy has smashed a couple of your friends. He has sex with one or two chicks who you work with, or maybe there's a bar or a place that you like to go to socially, and that this guy also goes to that place, and he slept with 4 or 5 other women who you know of who also go to that place, and now he's coming at you. It would be reasonable for you to wonder whether he's going to get with you and then, sleep with the next chick, because that's his history. Now, it would be completely unreasonable for that guy to call that woman out for being insecure or paranoid. Not that women ever get accused for being insecure, because that's something that pretty much exclusively gets levied at the feet of men only, which is another problem. But it would be unreasonable for that woman. It would be unreasonable for that guy to say, stop worrying about that. So what? I smashed 5 other chicks in this bar. I'm talking to you now. What's up? If you're going to be suspicious about that, I'm going to say that's a reasonable suspicion to have. So a lot of these buzzwords that get thrown around that are meant to make men feel guilty for standing on their own 2 feet and sticking to their morals and principles, like insecure and don't be controlling and all of these other words that they like to throw out there. I think that's what Tate is addressing, and I don't disagree. I think it's a measured, reasonable response. No guy wants to deal with that. Men want peace. They don't want to deal with constantly second guessing every decision that they make. And when you're dealing with a woman who's quote unquote used, men oftentimes don't feel at peace. So I have a lot more to say on this, obviously, or maybe not a lot, but maybe 1 or 2 other comments. But suffice to say, I don't have an issue necessarily with what Tate said. I more so have an issue with why women such as Brittany Renner can't seem to understand that they're going to have to make certain concessions if what they want is an actual relationship due to the decisions that they've made. And, it just is what it is. But initial thoughts on that, to be sure. I don't have an issue with what he said. I think what he said made sense. And I don't think that because guys go through the mental process of evaluating these things, that it means that they're frightened or somehow not strong enough to handle a woman who is used. I think it's a reasonable, measured response that any man is going to undergo, no matter what the circumstances are.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been hearing this air quote double standard of women being called hoes and guys being praised since middle school, latter years of elementary school. Like girls was like, why is it cool for him to be, you know, have all these girls or whatever, and girls get called, you know, hoes and blah 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 blah. Like, I've been hearing this for a long time, and you know, those women grew up, and those women are Brittany Renners and the Amber Roses right now, all over social media, trying to make it cool and trying to get some type of reclaim. All right. But what they're doing is behaving in their masculine energies is what they're doing. And they can be as coy and as dainty as they want to be. If they're sexually promiscuous, then they're acting masculine. You can't slice that any other. Yeah, you can't slice that any other way. And so for Brittany Renner and her attempts of rebranding herself as a woman who's a reform shown, right? A reform thought. And she's really trying to be like, hey, I don't live that life no more. I'm ready to be a wife, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So she's trying, you know, it's on deaf ears over here. But she's going from podcast to podcast, creating video after video, pleading her case to anybody that she wants, that, you know, that she would ultimately want to fund a lifestyle for the rest of her life. That's what she's looking for, because she's not going to settle for an average guy. Average guys want her all day, but she's not going to settle for an average guy. All right. So she wants somebody at a very high level. So that's why she goes on all of these videos, knowing she's going to go viral with the same talking points nowadays of I've changed. But if you've changed, Miss Renner, then you would see the fault in your own actions of thoughting it out for so many years. You wouldn't have to ask Mr. Andrew Tate, what's the why of me having a high body count is a bad thing, but a guy's having a good one. That mere thought process shows that you're not ready to be a wife. So she can try to play these mind games if she wants. I don't know who's buying them, but she's casting this out. And it's a very broad net, and there's a lot of simps out there, and there's simps out there with some cash. So, and she knows that. So she's trying to catch somebody with all of this rhetoric, but somebody with a keen eye and keen set of ears will also hear that she's not even close to whatever she's claiming that she is. So she's double talking. If there's a woman who really stepped in her feminine energy and was ready to be married, she would see the fault in her previous actions and repent, and then tell the world that, you know what, I was wrong for, you know, having all those bodies like that. And as a matter of fact, all these guys out here that says you should have a lower body count, they're actually right. But she won't do that because she's lacking accountability in that department. So she can claim she's being accountable by saying that I don't want to live like that anymore. But for her to have this cognitive dissonance, that record is out there. And not only that, you wrote books. You had all kinds of videos and all kinds of monologues of you just bragging about such a lifestyle. So there's a history out there on her. You know, the average girl in the street, you know what I'm saying? You're gonna have to do some investigative research, find out what kind of bodies that she's got on her list. But Miss Renner, the world knows. So good luck trying to cover that up. But I agree with you wholeheartedly here. I agree with Mr. Tate here. And Miss Renner, try again. All right.
For real.
Try again, Miss Renner. She's going. She's doing this thing, but to me, this is the latest ploy, the latest campaign. All right. The latest finesse, if you will. She dug herself such a large ditch. She has to go on this camp. She has to go on this campaign. Mm-hmm. And so for me, this is Brittany Renner for wife, 2024. This is her waving her thing. Hey, somebody marry me. She's campaigning for this. And for me, I'm not buying it. if there's some guy out there that's gonna simp, because you know they're gonna do it, feel like they got some arm candy or something like that, somebody gonna simp off on that. You know, I don't have that much faith in humanity, but I'm just telling you right now, it ain't working over here, Miss Renner. Try again.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I was gonna bring that up. I feel like, and I wonder whether anyone suggested this to her. Like, you've yet to receive your comeuppance truly. Like if she really was serious and she was really going to hold herself accountable, instead of going on podcasts and trying to point out societal double standards in such a way to excuse her decisions to make them seem more redeemable, she would get off social media. She'd stop getting on podcasts. She would find a career where she can exercise a talent that she has and contribute to society, where she could probably still earn a lucrative income. And she would do speed dating, eHarmony, whatever you got to do, paint and sips, wind downs. She would go to singles night at certain places. She would do things in such a way that a woman who is actually serious about being in a relationship, who has baggage, would also do. But she's not doing that. She's still very much in the limelight, trying to spew her rhetoric. That to me doesn't necessarily, you're not necessarily oozing accountability. You're just oozing, I'm trying to make excuses for my previous behavior so that you can understand the qualities that I still possess despite my behavior. Yep. Like, it rings on deaf ears, and I think she's realized. I wonder whether in hindsight she regrets a lot of the stuff that she did. I wonder when she's by herself, and she's in her thoughts, if she's like, I shouldn't have done any of that. I wonder, and she'll never admit this publicly. In all likelihood, she won't. But I wonder if that goes through her mind, because she's reaping what she sows, and she's a hit dog right now. And what she's trying to do is contribute to this ongoing liberal rhetoric that they are trying to create in our current culture, which stipulates that masculinity and femininity, that there's no difference, that there's no line between the two, that they are somehow equitable. And therefore, because I did all these things, I should be viewed upon the same way that a man would be viewed upon if he did them. And as Tate said, the world is inherently unfair. These things are not the same. They are inherently inequitable. And so you're going to have to understand the role that you played in these decisions and operate accordingly. And so I kind of feel like, what would endear her more, hell, she would even endear herself more to men who are looking for wives if she said, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done any of that. If I could take it all back, I would, but I can't. I'm in this situation now, and I just want to move forward with my life in as best a way as possible, instead of trying to say, I did what I did, here's why, and you should accept me or else, which is what she's doing. She's just really dug in, and you can't smoke her out of her own hole. And, I guess she'll die on that hill. But this is why I brought up the fact that she's going to have to make certain concessions. Because, women in Brittany Renner's position, they want to be married, or they want to get into a good relationship, or they want to be with a man who is in all likelihood preferably of high value. Despite the fact that you have this history, you're going to have to make certain concessions. And so in the last video, I said, she's going to have to consider being a part of certain things, like maybe a polyamorous relationship or being a kept woman. You're going to have to be a part of a setup where a man is married to a wife who's dutiful, and you're just you're the mistress that the wife knows about and that she allows the man to have around. You'll never have all of that, man, because most of him is going to belong to the wife. But we see certain types of setups like this. We know this stuff goes on in the real world and in society. I think she's going to have to give up on this dream of being in this committed monogamous situation with this high value guy, because most high value guys are going to evaluate your usage rate, and they're going to say, what's to stop me from getting with a woman who has a lesser usage rate?
Right.
And there's nothing stopping that guy from doing that. So if you want to hold on to this dream of being this wife or this this committed girlfriend, you're going to have to make certain concessions. And I think getting with a guy who is a part of a polyamorous setup, getting with a guy who is a kept woman, getting with a guy and you can be the kept woman who the wife knows about, but you're the mistress, or being a lifelong side piece in that regard. Those are some of the things that you're going to have to consider. And if you can't take doing any of that, then you're going to have to look at quote unquote average men. And I don't like to use the word average because average in this particular context tends to have a negative connotation. And most modern women, if you mention an average man, they're going to think negatively. So I don't even like using the word average. I understand, but you know what I'm saying? That's what they're going to do. So I don't even like to use words like average because they denote something negative. But I will say you're going to have to consider the guy who makes a salary, who has to get paid time off, who works, 8 to 5:30, and who owns, maybe, between 75 and 100K a year. You're going to have to consider those guys. So to women like Brittany Renner, those guys are average, you know what I'm saying? So like, you're going to have to consider those types of men if you can't make concessions to be with the kind of men at the top the way that you desire. And if you can't do either of those things, then I guess you're just SOL. Because if you're unwilling to go back to the drawing board, get out of the limelight, stop doing podcasts, get off social media, stop preaching your gospel, and just go back to the basics, and you don't want to be a kept woman, and you don't want to be with a guy who's quote unquote average, then I have no other suggestions for you. But I think Tate hit it right on the head. And I think if she is as intelligent as she proclaims herself to be, she'll listen to some of that.
Yeah. And I'll say this, when dealing with these, modern women and their philosophies of what happiness is, all right, it's complete fantasy, and it derives from a lot of components, but I would argue the main driver, and I say this damn near all the time, but it's these housewife shows where they're just living a lifestyle. Well, what lifestyle? A housewife's lifestyle, and the mimosas, the hair, the traveling.
It's the traveling.
All of this stuff. And you can't do that with an average guy, right? If he only makes 50, 60K a year, where can we travel internationally? Can I go to Fiji off your 50K? So they want some guy that can fund this level of operation, not for 1 year, for a lifetime. And so they want to live this life of just fantasy. So not only do they create Frankenstein men, they have a fairy tale lifestyle that they want to live with Frankenstein man.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they have all of this stuff going on, because they claim they want to get married so they can be happy. And I don't know if these women have seen marriage. There's nothing happy about it. It's all work. You constantly have to work with your partner, communicate with your partner, have differences with your partner, because that's natural when two different people get together. There will be differences. There will be butting of the heads. It doesn't have to be arguments. All right. It doesn't have to be crazy or abusive, but it's not fun. And it's nothing happy about that. It's boring. A real good marriage is boring. There's nothing going on. A safe lifestyle is boring. People who live the longest are boring people. They don't do much. But all of this excitement, all this wanting to go out and do all these things and travel and this and that, and they want to live a life of excitement within a marriage. Let them get married to a guy that's above average. But they're not gallivanting. They're not over here, they're not over there. She's not with her girlfriend sipping mimosas somewhere. I need you to fund this. There's a guy better than this. So she's going to create a wild situation to where she ended up divorcing because women divorce higher rates than men. She's going to call it up. She's going to call it off because she's not living the housewives lifestyle. And so for Brittany Renner, no, she can't slow down. This is the problem with her having too many penises. She done had sex. She done had relations with dudes that made more money than PJ Washington. And she's shooting for that because she wants to live a lifestyle of housewife just so she can flex on other people and say, because one of the greatest accomplishments for a thought is saying that they got married. That's like the highest thing. That's like, yep, I did all of that and I still got away with it. That's another flex for her. And this is why I say her pathology led her to us knowing her name in the first place. Her pathology is what's trying to con people into believing that she's suitable to be a wife right now. So again, have at it, Miss Renner. All right. You're not pulling one by me. All right. Or the conscious approach. All right. So but yeah, man, wild stuff. And fellas, if they want Frankenstein out of you, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know, leave her where you found her. Leave her where you found her. Take it for a spin. All right. But I warned you. All right. Do not go down that road, though. I'm warning you.
Yeah, she's gonna have to make some serious concessions, and I just think at this point she is unwilling to make those concessions.
She won't.
She thinks that she can still muscle her way into whatever it is that she's looking for, and it's just not going to work. It's not going to work without her making those concessions. So, nevertheless, content for this channel for sure, because I thought what Tate said was reasonable and measured. Those are my two buzzwords for this particular topic. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. But again, good luck to you, Miss Renner. Have at it. I don't know how successful you're going to be. It's crazy.
She gonna trick somebody.
Yeah, it'll be one of those guys like in the first video we talked about.
Yeah,
it'll be something like that. Okay, so lastly, we are going to talk about Akon because Akon is defending Nick Cannon. Nick Cannon, everybody's favorite modern polygamist, has a lot of kids with a lot of different women, and Akon is defending that. So he was recently giving some thoughts as to why he agrees with what Nick Cannon is doing. And so good stuff. Brittany Renner, not Brittany Renner, I'm sorry, Freudian slip. But Akon, Nick Cannon is almost at the point where he's a friend of the channel, but not quite. I don't think we have used. Yeah, he's getting there, but I don't know that he's there yet. But nevertheless, so Akon was on ZZ Mills, and the hostess asked him about Nick Cannon, and he was like, he agrees, and here's what he had to say as to why he agrees with Nick Cannon fathering all of these children, why there's nothing wrong with it.
Do you agree, like Nick Cannon and his spreading of his seed?
100%. I agree with him 1,000%.
Oh, but no.
That's how life is supposed to be.
No.
Why not?
Because
he's rich.
No, but this is wait.
Let me finish.
Okay, go on.
He's rich. He's responsible.
Is he?
Yes, he takes care of every one of those children.
No, but this is the
and the baby mothers with it, and they hurt for nothing, and they live comfortably.
No, but what about the kids though?
What about them?
Because this is what I mean about men, right? You guys think that just having kids and giving money is enough, but what about the time?
He's there for every one of them. I got 9. And I'm there for every one of mine.
So every single time you're at every single recital.
Raise my kids.
No, but this is
hold on.
Go on.
Responsible.
Yeah.
To be understanding, to protect their mother,
to to give hand with their father and assist with family planning and to be responsible adults.
Okay, but what
My
about
job ain't to
quality
be doing all that extra stuff that all
But
these
what about-
holidays and recitals and all that.
Nobody
Now,
is,
guess
though.
what? While I'm taking care of my responsibility to make sure the family has a roof over their head and food, if I have the time to do that and show love, yes, I will do that. But my responsibility is to make sure that they grow up responsible, strong, and become a real, input to society.
Yeah, but you're not then.
All right, well said, Mr. Akon.
Yeah, so she wasn't with it. She clearly wasn't with what he had to
Of
say.
course not. Of course not.
Were you?
I mean, yeah, clearly, man. I agree with Mr. Akon's. All right. I agree with Mr. Akon. Right on, Mr. Cannon doing his thing. She tripped me out with that recitals thing. What? So here's my thing, dude. Akon, he's an African man. So he's aware of what masculinity should look like. And he's also aware of having multiple wives. Now, Nick Cannon isn't married to any of these baby mamas because, well, polygamy is illegal. So he has agreements and understanding. So therefore, they're baby mamas in America. But if you want to play the card, those are his wives. What's the big deal here? And so if you can afford the kids and the wife, you should be able to have them. So what Akon's saying is, hey, look, going to recitals and all this other extra stuff, that's not my job. And my job is to make sure that they're secure, taken care of, and that they have principles and understanding so they can go through life successfully. That's my duty as the man here. Now, when it comes to the recitals and all this other stuff right there, that's the mom's job. That's part of the nurturing duties of her. So here's the catch, though. All right. So if you, and men have heard this before, but they choose to ignore this part of it. You have to be able to afford the next woman. Now, when you can't afford the next woman or the next child, then you should not be having them. So I agree with Mr. Cannon because he can afford it. I agree with Mr. Akon. He said he's got 9. He can afford it. So it has to go with both. And what the part that's missing from most, and I don't even say most, I would say the majority of men that women are sleeping with, because clearly not all men are having sex, right? So the majority of men that women are sleeping with, the ones that they say ain't about nothing, the ones that dip out on the, on the family and dip out on her, don't know how to communicate, abusive, the crazy ones who don't have the money, they're sleeping with those dudes. And those dudes don't care to have enough money. So those guys that are up there in that percent of that 20% range of guys, it's not all the 20%, but there's a healthy number of those clowns in that 20% that's out here having all the kids and making all these women sour and bitter. Those guys don't have the Nick Cannon money or the Akon money to be having 9 kids. So the state take care of them. And then now there's this stigma going around the community. So when Nick Cannon does it the right way, women in society associate those air quote deadbeat guys into what Nick Cannon's doing. Nick Cannon's doing a strategic thing on purpose because he understands the principle of it. Those guys that's out here that's just doing whatever because they're broken in their own ways. All right. They're associating what Nick Cannon is doing to those guys. So initial thoughts there. But how do you feel, sir? Do you agree with Mr. Cannon's or do you think he's pushing it a little bit?
This one's tricky for me. So, in the grand scheme of things, do I think it makes more sense for a person in Nick Cannon's position to do this than it is for Joe Blow on the street, who's not Nick Cannon, to be spreading his seed in such a way? Sure, it does. I would rather a guy who is a hard worker and is intelligent and who is financially free to embrace being able to sow his oats in this way, more so than a guy who is ill-equipped to do it within this context. However, practically speaking, there are certain aspects of it that do make sense and all of that kind of stuff. So I get the utility of it, but after I get past the utility of it, I just have to personalize it, because that's the only way that I can really think about this particular thing. And I ask myself whether I would be happy if I had a daughter who was a part of this setup. That's where my mind goes. So I think about it from the sense, if I have a girl, if the world was as I intended it to be, right, and I had it my way, would I rather my daughter be within a relationship or marriage context where there's a child involved with one guy who doesn't have 9 or 10 other kids by 8 or 9 other women, because at that point he has to spread himself amongst those 8 or 9 other women? I would say I would prefer that my daughter wasn't involved in that particular setup. Personally, I would rather. Now, things happen. So, me, I've sat here on this channel and I've talked about how I have a preference for not procreating with a woman who's already a single mother. And I maintain that for myself. But I also understand that the world is more complicated than my own personal ideology. So it's entirely possible that if I'm successful in being able to actualize that particular preference for myself, and I end up having my own children, and I end up having a daughter, I'm still going to want my daughter to be in an ideal situation the way I see ideal being. And, is there a chance that my daughter can get with a guy who maybe has 1 or 2 other children? Sure. There's, life is like that. Would I prefer that guy to have 1 other children from previous marriages or other serious relationships, as opposed to them just being baby mama, baby daddy situations? Yeah. But ideally, would I prefer that my daughter exists within a context in which she's raising a child with one man who doesn't have to spread himself so thin? Yeah, that would be my preference. And so, because that's my own personal preference, I look at an individual like Nick Cannon and I say, although from a practical standpoint, he can handle his business and he's doing it strategically and there's a point to what he's doing, and I get all of that, I still think that there is room for there to be dysfunctionality present in that particular kind of setup.
Yeah.
Because I just don't see how one man can spread himself amongst 8 and 9 children and 6, 7, 8 women. I just don't see how that is something that is feasible. It can be done practically, and I get the utility of it, and sure, he can take care of them or whatnot, but a woman's maternal instinct is for the father of her child to be present as much as possible. And so when you have that instinct multiplied by 8 or 9, because that's how many women you have children with, things can become a bit more complicated. And so if I'm thinking of it for myself, I would rather my own daughter not be involved in that particular kind of complicated setup. So I'm not necessarily trying to take anything away from Nick Cannon or Akon. I'm not trying to say that it's right or wrong. I'm not trying to say that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. I'm just saying, if it was my kid, I wouldn't want my kid to be a part of that. And, likewise, if I had my own son and my son was fortunate enough to become successful, I wouldn't recommend that my son is, spreading his seeds to that degree. I'm not going to sit here and try to micromanage his life and tell him that he shouldn't have children, and things are going to happen. You happen to become a single father and all of that kind of stuff. It is what it is. But I don't know that I would recommend. I don't know. I don't know that I would recommend it to that degree where you have 9 different baby mothers and 9 or 10 children or whatever the number for Nick Cannon is, because I think that there's too much dysfunctionality that can come from it. And as much as we talk about the nature of women and all of this kind of stuff, we also talk about how there are certain things about a woman's nature that are innate, such as seeking masculinity in a man and wanting a man to be a provider and all of these kinds of things and be present. And so I think it's a part of a woman's maternal instinct for a guy to be present. And I just think that practically speaking, it's difficult for a guy to spread himself that thin and still make all these people happy. And I know that it's not his job necessarily to make them happy, but it just creates all kinds of dysfunctional scenarios and things like that when you're dealing with that many people and that many children. And so I just look at it and I say, I would prefer that my daughter strayed away from stuff like that. But otherwise, it is what it is. I understand the world and the way things are. And I completely agree that if a guy can afford it and he has the wherewithal and he has the temperament to be able to balance these things, then who am I to judge? But if it's my own daughter, I would prefer that she weren't involved in that particular kind of setup. But that was pretty much all I had on that.
Oh, that's fair. And I would say that me personally, if I had a daughter and there was a guy who had it and I spoke to this guy, traditional courting. And then I'm like, all right, you're interested in my daughter. I already see you got 3 other wives. Why do you want her, why do you want my daughter as a 4th, bro? Trying to be greedy around here? Like, I'll talk to bro. But if bruh has an empire he's building, a vision he's building, and the kids aren't just kids, they're resources for a future empire, then I'm with it. And temperament is only required with modern women because they want everything for their damn self.
Well, when I say temperament, I mean the literal.
Okay. I know what you mean, but they would also have to have, if they understand the program, then having just managing your home. I mean, that's a king's job. So you're supposed to manage the kingdom, so to speak. And so this prevents cheating, from the man's part. Because he's a man who's making enough money to have that many wives and that many kids, and it be sound enough. That guy's going to step out anyway on whoever's daughter because he's got options to do so. But if there's a situation where this guy's saying, hey, I'm not being willy-nilly with it, I got 4 vaginas around here, all right, the ones that I wanted. And so there is no need for whatever stuff, like in Mormon stuff where they're doing polygamy and all of that other stuff. If the culture is built for that, then people can sustain it. Now, is it all roses there? No, because there's not empires there. There's not somebody that's pulling in, dumb guap, I'm sure. All right. They're living in Mormon neighborhoods. They're just following it for the religion. So I'm sure there's some other things that come up in those things, but this is for guys who can't afford it. And if he's just doing it so he can just get nuts and have kids, then no, I don't want my daughter doing that. But if this guy has a vision and this means something, then my family can marry into that. And so marriage in the old sense, before all of this marrying for love garbage, marriage was a business venture. It was, hey, you got that going on, I got this going on, so let's make that happen. And the people arranged it. with all of this, and it was because those people are too stupid to figure it out by themselves. And you're seeing what happens when people got choices. Look at this madness. So love is and not even what actual love is. See, to me, love is that you would actually kill somebody because of love, not kill your partner. You would kill another person because you love whoever you're protecting. Love, you would hurt the person you love's feelings because you love them, because they have to get their life together. But these definitions of love that people have nowadays is that don't hurt their feelings. You know, hey, don't do this. It's making people and everything around us soft. And it's making people irresponsible. And it's also making people have no accountability. So this fake ass love that everybody out here is trying to find in the next person, they'll be trying to find that foolishness for the rest of their life. Won't find it because their definition of love is skewed. So what needs to come is love for your bloodline, love for your legacies. That's what needs to be. That's what needs to be happening. And so people need to go out and try to have the best genetic situation they have going on. Hey, I'm a marry into that family. Why? Because she got this and this and this and that going in her family. So I'm gonna marry into that and put my DNA into that. Not because this person here, you know, this person's they bloodline got all this crazy stuff going on and all this trauma that's being passed through epigenetics. And then you're just gonna sleep with that person because y'all had a good Saturday night. Now all of a sudden you got a kid, and now your kid come out jacked up. You're trying to your best with all these principles and all this stuff, but the mama jacked up and the kid's jacked up because it comes from a crazy ass bloodline. So there needs to be people who are taking reproduction serious. No one's doing that. Now, I'm not too sure what Nick Cannon's checklist is for what he's doing, but I'm just saying that there needs to be more seriousness put into what marriage is instead of love and feelings, because feelings are fickle. I felt cold this morning. I feel warm this afternoon. If I made a decision based on this morning, all right, I'll be burning up right now. So people have to take a more holistic look of what marriage and the institution of marriage, what it should be, and what it used to be, because what it is now, it's the divorce rates that we see going on now. It's the children out of wedlock garbage and all this other stuff now. This is what the modern institution of marriage and the modern concepts of love. Because just as much as we like to talk about modern women, there's also modern men. And they don't understand what it takes to be men. So Nick Cannon is trying a more traditional form. If all the men go away right now, they'll still, and the same number of women go away, there'll still be more women on the planet than there are men. That means that men have options and we can go out there and do their thing if they're capable enough to do so. So I'm all for a man who's capable enough to do so, who has a vision, a goal, and stuff like that. And Pops gave it the green check mark. My daughter can marry into that because she ain't just gonna be some baby mama, and my grandchild ain't just gonna be some child out of wedlock. It's gonna be that kid's gonna be born with wealth and other things going on in it. So that's my spill on it. Akon's a wealthy man. Nick Cannon is, I don't know his net worth, but apparently it's enough to keep up what he's got going. So I don't know if he's biting off too more as much as he can chew. Hopefully he has an accountant. Hopefully he has contracts. All right, because we're in a new day, and so trying to do traditional stuff in a new day, I don't know how that will fund. I don't know how that would play out. But hopefully he's taking the right provisions to get this executed. But the thought process and principle, though, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, that all sounds good. I just think, and I wasn't necessarily, I don't know that I brought up the concept of love. I wasn't trying to bring that into the Okay.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I wasn't. So I am all for a more holistic approach to marriage as well. But I still think even when you do that, you can still spread yourself thin enough to where it becomes a very dysfunctional situation. That's even if you can monetarily support it, it can still devolve into a dysfunctional situation. So, um, you know, a situation. I think Nick Cannon is bordering on extreme, is what I'm getting at. Like, you're getting into the double digits of children and the double digits of women. I think that that's an extreme case, whether it can be handled monetarily or not. And I just wouldn't want any of my children to be involved in any of that, because one can argue that Nick Cannon is the only thing that is making that situation enticing from a bloodline standpoint. I don't know who any of his baby mothers are, which lets me know what they got going on. So it's not like there's an empire being built. It's just Nick Cannon is bringing these other women into his own empire. And that to me is different than a woman marrying into a situation where there is a legacy of an empire present. I don't know that those two things are the same, but nevertheless, that's just me personally. I kind of feel like, as tactical as it may be, when you're getting into that kind of stuff where you're looking at what Nick Cannon has going on, I think as practical as it can be, there's still a chance that it can be spread so thin that it can become a bit dysfunctional. But at the end of the day, I'm not into controlling people. So if my daughter, for example, said that she wanted to do this, and I, vetted the situation with her and she still wanted to do it, I'm not going to force her hand. I just got to hope the best for her. But ideally speaking, would I prefer it not be something of that nature? Yeah, I would. If I'm being honest, I would prefer that it not be that way. And that doesn't mean that I want my daughter to marry for love. It just means that I would prefer that my daughter stay out of situations that can devolve into a high degree of dysfunctionality. And I kind of feel like those are the types of situations to which that can happen. Even though she might be getting taken care of, I don't want to see my child unhappy. And unhappy, love, blah blah blah, all these other pleasantries. I know that as a pops, I wouldn't want to see my daughter unhappy with a particular situation. So,
yeah. And I'll say this, and because I agree with that. Again, I don't know the situation with Nick Cannon. In principle, I don't have a problem with what he's doing because I see what he's doing. And when there's new people that's being brought up in the ranks and making money, he can begin a legacy. And so if he's doing this right, it makes sense. But of course, it would be ideal if they were all on the same area, the same space, so the kids can see each other. So it's just not like, oh yeah, I got a brother in another state, a sister, I never see her. If it's getting weird, then it's weird.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
But if it actually made sense where everybody was on a compound and it was all living there, and there's things that make sense there, not a cult, nothing weird, just something standard. There's something standard where they just all decide to live there. If they don't all want to stay in the same house, we all stay in the same community area. The kids can come out and play with the other kids and stuff like that. If there's communal understanding between one wife and the other four, then they can do their thing because they all have an understanding of what's being built and what's going forward. But that is so traditional that I really don't see that happening. Not to the T type of thing, but I'm understanding his vision. He's doing it in a modern way, which, like how you said, it can end in a powder keg. It can just be an absolute disaster, TNT, cartoons, Looney Tunes type of explosions. So who knows what's going on? And we'll see how this play out in the next 15 years when 4 of those women have reality shows and all this other crap.
Yes, that's what I see coming down the pike. And we know for sure that is not what's taking. This is not Big Love. There was a show on HBO. It had Bill Paxton in it. It's a show years and years ago called Big Love. And literally what we're talking about in this is that show, where it was a show about modern polygamy, and Bill Paxton his character was married to these 4 other women, and he had multiple children with each woman. And so people are like, oh, what we got going on with this? This is weird stuff. But they all lived in the same houses, in the same vicinity, and all of that kind of stuff. There was, as off-putting as it may be probably to most people who are living in modern westernized society, there was structure to it that when you watch the show, it was like, even though I might not necessarily be down with this, there's a particular structure to it that makes me understand why it functions. I don't think that that's what's happening with Nick Cannon. And I don't think that that's what's happening with most of these modern situations. I think most of these modern situations is just, I'm just skeeting off and having as many kids. And I think that there's an ego component to it on the part of a person like Nick Cannon who just wants to run the score up. Now, you know, I don't want to speak ill of Nick Cannon because I've always said that I respect him for his work ethic. And so maybe there is a method to his madness, but I know that what I saw in Big Love, it ain't what's going on with Nick Cannon. You know, one of the women's over here, the other woman is another part of the country, the other one's here, the other one's there. You just got jits all over the place. And so what I'm saying is I prefer that my daughter not be in that. But if there was more structure to it, and I saw the way that it conceivably made sense, even though I wouldn't necessarily be on that in terms of my own children, I'd be like, okay, it is what it is. I'm not gonna hold your feet to the fire. But I'm not. What I'm seeing is just modern, just, you know, skeeting off. And so that is when I kind of say, I don't really know if I'm with all of that. Because it ain't, like you said, it ain't gonna be too long before one of these. There's gonna be several of these women who are on Love and Hip Hop, or they're on Basketball Wives, or whatever show that they come up with, or one of these weirdo shows on these networks, TLC or something, where they actively give women who are in these positions a platform to spew nonsense. And I just don't know how beneficial that is.
That's fair. Very fair. Very fair.
But nevertheless, good luck to Nick Cannon and good luck to Akon or whatever y'all got going on, man. Akon was a big fan when he was in his prime making them beats and stuff. So shouts out to Akon, shouts out to Nick Cannon. And good luck to you, Mr. Cannon, and your, you know, Big Love family. But with that, man, we're going to go ahead and call it quits on this particular video for this week, December the 27th. Those were good topics, good stuff that we touched on, man. Appreciate everybody for watching this video. If you were on the stream, man, go ahead and leave a comment. We have 5 people on the stream at one point tonight. So certainly appreciate everybody supporting this logical content, man. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you are willing, hit that like button, comment on the video, man. And we certainly appreciate you being a part of what we got going on as we continue to build. Once again, my name is JV Wins. This is my good buddy, Mr. Dogon SS. You can find me on Instagram at JV Wins, JVWINS. And you can find the Conscious Approach platform also on Instagram at Conapproach, CONAPPROACH. Be on the lookout for us as we maintain presences on other platforms as well, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts once we get the RSS feed up. Very excited about these things coming down the pike. If you're watching this video on the Meta page, go ahead and follow the page, like the video, comment, share, do all of that good stuff. And until the next video, please continue to support logical content because we certainly appreciate you.
Yes, sir. And the name is Dogon SS. You can find me on Instagrams at Dogon_SS and on YouTube at Dogon_SS because they got handles now. All right. And by the way, guys, hit that subscribe button as we've already stated, man. We're trying to get to 1K, man. So help us get there because we're part of the Conscious Approach community around here. All right. And as I always say on every part, guys, don't be too high. Don't be too low. Keep it calm. Keep it chill. Keep it player. All right. Never let anybody get you off your pivot. All right. So until the next time, guys, we'll catch y'all on the flip side. Skr.
Yes, sir. Race to 1K and guys get off OnlyFans. I think that's gonna be my send off for every video. Even if we don't talk about something like that, I'm gonna just be like, man, get off OnlyFans. That's gonna be my mantra, man. I might make that my mission statement, man. Y'all need to get off that OnlyFans.
Yes.
So yeah, those will be my parting words. Until next time, we're gonna see you on the next video. But we are out. Peace.
Peace. Skr, skr.